Canada officially recognizes the State of Palestine, a historic shift in foreign policy. In a landmark move that is already reverberating across the globe, Canada has officially recognized the State of Palestine, joining a growing list of Western nations that are rethinking their Middle East policy. The decision marks a historic departure from Canada's traditionally cautious stance and positions Ottawa as a major voice in the ongoing debate over the future of Israel and Palestine. Prime Minister Mark Carney's office issued the announcement on Sunday, declaring, "Canada recognizes the State of Palestine and offers our partnership in building the promise of a peaceful future for both the State of Palestine and the State of Israel." The statement underscores Canada's support for a two-state solution, while simultaneously placing clear conditions on Palestinian governance. Ottawa's decision comes at a time of heightened tensions, devastating conflict in Gaza, and waning international faith in a negotiated settlement. The significance of Canada's recognition. Canada is not just any country on the global stage. As a member of the G7 and a longtime close ally of the United States and Israel, its recognition carries symbolic and diplomatic weight. For decades, Ottawa has aligned its Middle East policy closely with Washington, often refraining from unilateral moves. By recognizing Palestine now, Canada signals two key messages. The status quo is unacceptable. Ongoing settlement expansion, violence, and humanitarian crises have made the two-state solution increasingly distant. Ottawa's recognition is a warning that time is running out. Diplomatic pressure must be applied. Canada is joining European allies, like the United Kingdom, Ireland, Norway, Portugal, and Australia, in using diplomatic recognition to push for meaningful negotiations. This recognition may not immediately change realities on the ground, but it adds momentum to a global movement calling for justice, dignity, and peace for Palestinians. Conditions attached to recognition. Prime Minister Carney was careful to emphasize that Canada's recognition of Palestine does not mean a blank check. Instead, it comes with conditions meant to encourage reform and accountability. According to the Prime Minister's statement, the Palestinian Authority (PA) must commit to holding democratic elections in 2026. These elections must exclude Hamas, which Ottawa designates as a terrorist organization. Palestine must commit to demilitarization and build a governance structure compatible with peaceful coexistence. Recognition does not condone terrorism or violent resistance. By outlining these requirements, Canada hopes to prevent recognition from empowering extremist factions. Instead, Ottawa aims to bolster moderate Palestinian leadership and give diplomatic legitimacy to nonviolent, political pathways. Balancing recognition with Israel's security. Carney also made it clear that Canada's recognition is not meant to undermine Israel's right to exist or to defend itself. The statement explicitly mentioned that Ottawa will continue to stand by Israel's security, oppose terrorism, and reject narratives that delegitimize Israel. This balancing act reflects Canada's attempt to bridge the divide, affirming Palestinian statehood while assuring Israel and its allies that security remains a top priority. International reactions. Israel's response. As expected, Israel strongly rejected the decision. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated, "No foreign recognition will dictate Israel's future. A Palestinian state will not arise. Israel will defend itself and its people against any attempt to impose conditions from the outside." For Israel, such recognitions by Western allies are seen as undermining its negotiating power and rewarding Palestinian leadership without concrete guarantees of peace. United States. The United States, Israel's closest ally, expressed unease. Washington has historically opposed unilateral recognition, insisting that Palestinian statehood must emerge through direct negotiations. However, given the growing chorus of recognitions from close allies, pressure is mounting on Washington to reconsider its position. Europe and beyond. The UK, Australia, Portugal, and Ireland had already announced recognition, and Canada's move adds momentum. European governments argue that recognizing Palestine now helps preserve the very possibility of a two-state solution, which unchecked settlement expansion threatens to erase. Arab states welcomed Canada's decision. Leaders from Jordan, Egypt, and the Gulf expressed appreciation, framing it as a long overdue step toward justice. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas praised Canada's courage, calling it a milestone in our people's struggle for freedom. Canada's foreign policy evolution. For decades, Canadian foreign policy has oscillated between strong support for Israel and calls for Palestinian rights. Previous governments often adopted a neutral tone, but Ottawa rarely took bold steps. Under Prime Minister Carney, however, Canada appears ready to reassert its international role as a peace broker. Carney, a former central banker turned politician, has emphasized Canada's responsibility to champion rules-based international order. Recognizing Palestine aligns with that vision, using diplomacy to promote justice and stability. Domestic reactions in Canada. Within Canada, reactions are mixed. Supporters argue the move reflects Canadian values of justice, human rights, and peace. They see it as restoring Canada's image as a global mediator. Critics, particularly among pro-Israel advocacy groups, warn that recognition rewards Palestinian dysfunction and risks straining relations with Israel. Among Canada's Muslim and Arab communities, the decision was celebrated as an affirmation of decades of activism and advocacy. The recognition could influence domestic politics, especially with elections approaching in the coming years. Implications for the peace process. The recognition itself does not establish borders, settle disputes over Jerusalem, or resolve refugee claims. Those thorny issues remain. However, it could have several practical effects. Strengthening Palestinian diplomacy. Recognition boosts the Palestinian Authority's legitimacy on the world stage. It allows Ramallah to negotiate with greater confidence, knowing it has powerful allies. Increasing pressure on Israel. As more Western allies recognize Palestine, Israel risks diplomatic isolation. While U.S. support remains unwavering, the erosion of consensus among its allies could impact Israel's flexibility. Creating incentives for reform. By attaching conditions, such as elections and demilitarization, Canada pushes the PA toward reforms that could make it a more credible partner for peace. Global momentum for a two-state solution. Recognition campaigns are part of a broader international push to prevent the collapse of the two-state vision. If left unaddressed, the conflict risks sliding into permanent occupation and endless violence. Challenges and risks ahead. Despite the symbolism, Canada's recognition also faces challenges. Hamas factor. With Hamas still powerful in Gaza, excluding it from elections may deepen Palestinian divisions. Israeli retaliation. Israel may respond by downgrading diplomatic ties with Ottawa or restricting cooperation. U.S. policy clash. Canada risks straining relations with Washington, though the Biden administration faces similar pressure from within the Democratic Party to shift policy. On-the-ground reality. Recognition does not end settlement construction, checkpoints, or military operations. Without actual policy shifts, Palestinians may see little tangible change. The bigger picture. This decision must be seen within a broader global realignment. As conflicts in Ukraine and elsewhere strain Western alliances, countries like Canada are increasingly seeking to assert moral leadership. Recognition of Palestine is part of this reassertion. Moreover, the Middle East is undergoing rapid transformation. Normalization deals between Israel and Arab states, shifting Gulf politics, and the rise of China's influence have created new dynamics. Canada's move re-injects the Palestinian question into global diplomacy at a moment when many feared it was being sidelined. Conclusion. Canada's recognition of Palestine is not just a diplomatic gesture, it is a political statement, a moral declaration, and a challenge to the international community. It says that the time for delay has passed, and that the dream of two states cannot be allowed to vanish. Whether this recognition will spur real progress remains uncertain. The obstacles, political, military, and ideological, are formidable.